Hey guys, how's it going? Jay Sensational here. Welcome back to the channel. So this is a little bit in the making. I was supposed to get this out yesterday, but nevertheless, we are here with the Viktor Karma Barkeep Masterclass, the deck that I really popped off with this season, deck that I used hit rank 6 earlier, and the deck that I think a lot of you have been looking forward to. So very excited to dive deep into this one, give you guys the ins and outs, and bring up your games to the point where I think that hopefully you can find some success of it yourself. So sit back, relax, let's get into it. Take out your notepads, take some notes down. This is your masterclass by Jay Sensation. Okay, let's start off with the deck list as per usual, and then we'll dive into the mulligan and go from there. So Viktor Karma Ionia PNZ is this mix of a stall / control deck for the first 9 turns, and then it's this combo-esque finish once Karma is enlightened. You have a little bit of an early game with Vestayan Disciple, much more of just a draw card and not really just early blocker. But we do have 3 copies of Fallen Feline, which is just a decent 1 mana 2/1, can trade into 1-drops and 2-drops, and gives us an option to get the Hexite Crystals off of Time Trick and Deep Med to act as an emergency sort of removal against some more aggressive decks, or just a way to kind of slow down the game by forcing your opponent into awkward developments. 3 Tasty Feyfolk as our sort of mid-game unit. It's really like the only sort of units we have in this deck to provide us with a little bit of stabilization. Not only does it have 4 attack, which helps it trade up, but also having a lifesteal makes it very, very good at just slowing the game down because we need to get to our late game turns. Having cards like Twin Discipline in order to protect the Tasty Feyfolk gives us an opportunity to potentially double trade and get double lifesteal off of the Tasty Feyfolk itself, which can give us a lot of time to get to, again, our Enlightened turn with Karma. For our removal suite, we have a Thermo Beam as well as Mystic Shot and a copy of Aftershock as our damage base removal. And as some of our more stall cards in the Ionia package, we have cards like Concussive Palm, Will of Ionia, and Ionian Tailstones can give us access to Homecoming. We have a few draw cards because it's really important to have the draw cards with Karma. That's kind of how you cycle through your deck once you're enlightened and really have those really strong pop-off turns. So we have 3 copies of Time Trick, 1 copy of Deep Med, and a Piltover Tailstones that can act as an progress day in a pinch. Also having the ability to just keep Vestayan Disciple in your hand as Sheeman wins gives us another opportunity to use it with Karma as well. And of course, we have 3 copies of Back Alley Bar, probably the best card in this deck, and we'll dive into the mulligans and talk about what really makes this deck really pop off. Now, going into the mulligan, I think this is where the deck actually simplifies a little bit because your mulligan across most different matchups is usually the same when it comes to what cards you want to prioritize. And those 3 cards are Viktor, Back Alley Bar, and Vestayan Disciple. Vestayan Disciple, especially if you have the turn 1 attack token, allows you to just continually cycle through your deck to try to find cards like Viktor as well as Back Alley Bar if you do miss them in your mulligan. So it does act as a little bit of an insurance if you do end up with a rough mulligan. Viktor, I think, requires a little bit less explanation. Once you level Viktor, you can compound that with Karma at the very end. Just have some really explosive turns because Viktor will discount your deck or discount any created cards by 1, which is really good since Karma creates a lot of cards. Viktor himself also has the ability to just scale into the late game, and if you do need to kill your opponent before turn 10 because you're trying to race them down, Viktor also provides us with an alternate win condition just because it has Augment. Our deck creates a lot of cards, and we can roll something like Elusive or Overwhelm with Spell Shield in order to just kind of cheese our opponent out before we need to actually get to the last turn. Back Alley Bar is really, really powerful in this deck because you do get the mana discounts. It also comes with a 3/3 body as well as generating us a little bit of value in hand, which makes it just a phenomenal card within this deck simply because we're casting a lot of cards and it doubles down on discounts on cards like Tailstones and things like that. The way this card works is that any card that you haven't played this game costs 1 less. So if you play Concussive Palm for the first time with Back Alley Bar on board, it costs 3 mana, but every time after you cast Concussive Palm, it won't get the discount anymore. The cool thing about this card is that it does double up on discounts, so you do have 2 Back Alley Bars. Any new card you play is discounted by 2. And then if you have a leveled Viktor, any new card that you haven't played that is created costs 3 less. So you have a very, very strong way to compound discounts, which can just really make it very, very difficult for your opponent to kind of fight for it, because all of your cards cost very, very little. After that, we just have a bunch of situational mulligans, things like Thermo Beam for maybe like Kindred, things that just generally have more than 2 health, for opponents' Victors, for MFs, things like that. Thermo Beam is kind of just a little bit more flexible because your deck doesn't really have any ways of dealing damage outside of 2, because you have Mystic Shots as well as the Hexite Crystals. But having access to Thermo Beam / Aftershock, if we know our opponent plays units with 3 or 4 health, is pretty important. Fallen Feline against aggro for the most part. Mystic Shot, a little bit more flexible, definitely more of an anti-aggro kind of card, but also has niches against cards like Nora, as well as Heimer, and things like that. Other people's Assigned Disciples, you know how it goes. AC Fatefolk, our anti-aggro card, and the rest is kind of just, you know, just very, very situational. It doesn't actually, the cool thing about this deck is that cards like Concussive Palm, Will, like Homecoming from Telstones, they're not actually very, very important to keep, even in the matchups where they might be good, because you have so many of them in your deck that it's kind of hard to miss out on a copy by the turn you need it, which allows you to mulligan even harder for the 3 core cards of your deck, being the Assigned Disciple, Back Alley Bar, Viktor, or the more situational cards like maybe you need like an early Thermo Beam or just a block with a Feline. So don't be afraid to mulligan a lot harder for some of your cards, especially if you're thinking about keeping like a card like Concussive Palm or Will of Ionia, or even like a Telstones in hand, just as a good card in the matchup, because you have so many copies of them, so you can mull harder for cards that actually matter a lot more. But that's just a basics of the mulligans. Let's dive into some more specific examples in game and talk about what the hands look like in a specific matchup. All right, let's start off with this mulligan against a Gwen Sejuani deck. So in starting hand, we have 2 1-drops, Shadow Assassin, as well as Viktor. So I believe our opponent is playing this sort of like mid-range kind of deck. Fallen Feline is good because it kind of trades up. They have 2 1s, they have 3 2s, but they do have Troll Chance and things like that. So I don't think it's worth keeping both Felines, although I think it could make a case just because it's a good early unit blocker. But I just want to mulligan a little bit harder. I have a 1-drop in hands, I have my Viktor, and if my opponent has a slow start, or if I just draw in something like a Mystic Shot or just some Thermo Beam to get me there, I'm looking for a few better cards. And so I'm just keeping Fallen Feline and Viktor and calling it a day. See what my 2 cards are, and I get a Palm and a Telstones, which is actually pretty decent in this matchup, given the fact that they are relatively mid-rangey, and unlike their Noxus counterpart, they don't really have a way to abuse attacks. So once a card gets stunned, it gets stunned. So stuns in this matchup are a lot more important, and now we have a pretty decent way to stall through the first couple turns. All right, next up we have a matchup into what is essentially Auction or Kindred Nasus, but looks like they're playing Auction over multiple copies of Kindred, and we get this opening hand. We have Thermo Beam, Twin, Assigned Disciple, and Mystic Shot. Thermo Beam, I think, is an auto keep into these Kindred matchups because it's so important to be able to deal with them on turn 4 as soon as they come down. And having the Thermo Beam is probably one of the best tools to actually deal with it, apart from an Aftershock. So keeping Thermo is fantastic. What's also good about this sort of matchup into this sort of SI deck is that if you do have Token on turn 1, Assigned Disciple always connects because they don't have a unit to hate spike it yet. So keeping Assigned Disciple in these matchups, even though they do have ways to deal with it, it does guarantee us a strike on turn 1, which I'm very excited about. Mystic Shot and Twin are less useful. There's an argument to keeping Mystic Shot just to kind of chip away at some things like Auction. But it looks like I decided to keep it just to try to chip away at Auction because their deck doesn't run any protection. And we have a very, very removal heavy hand in hopes of just dealing with the early champions. And we have the Disciple to cycle us through. Next up, we have a little bit of a throwback to the art game against Majin, starting off with Will of Ionia, Mystic Shot, Deep Med, and the Bar into Nami TF. So in these Ionian matchups, they tend to go pretty slow. Now Nami being one of the more explosive ones does mean it is probably one of the faster decks to play against, but I think it still gives enough time to just hold Back Alley Bar because it's just so good at capitalizing on our future turns going into the future. Mystic Shot I think is a keep just because we need to be able to answer Twisted Fate. And that's one of the ways we lose, because if they protect or Twisted Fate and we don't have a way to kill it, then that can easily snowball out of our protection, and they can usually do that faster than we can get our game plan down online. The other two cards, mediocre in fact. Fallen Feline, Portal Cannon was an old card, old deck list. Now that would be like a Vistine Disciple, and his hand's like looking pretty okay. And at this point, I think you're noticing a pretty common trend in just the general kind of mulligans, just because there's very few high priority targets that you want to keep. Now in this matchup against Kai'Sa, one drop, it'd be on a trade up. Viktor, just solid unit overall. And Tasty Faithful, I think just decent unit to kind of stall us through. Trades into their 4/4 overwhelms. Trades pretty much into almost anything in their deck as long as they don't have Evolve. I think it's a pretty okay keep. Anything else is kind of just mediocre, maybe looking for like a palm or things like that. I think Time Trick with Fallen Feline is just a little bit of a bait in trying to keep both, just because the odds are so low, and it's only good if you have nothing better to do. So overall, just Viktor, Fallen Feline, Tasty Fail could be okay, but maybe just dig for something like Palm instead. Deep Med, Telstone's decent. And Palm. So on to the next part, and likely the hardest part of pretty much any Karma deck, is figuring out how to fill in the turns 1 through 9, or at least whatever turn it is before you get to the Enlightened part. And this is generally pretty hard because you have to play the role of a control deck, but you don't really have very many control tools, in the sense that you don't have cards like Ruination or Vengeance or any of that hard removal things. If you palm or will something, you're sort of just slowing the game down, but not really addressing the overall problem. And you're really just more of a stall deck than anything else. It's not like you're setting up avalanches into ravines, into whales, or vile feasts, or anything like that. You're really just trying to slow the game down and to get yourself in a spot where either you can just go down to a low enough health but still survive, and then just drop Karma and turn the game around. Because in this game, or in this specific deck, your health total is a little bit more of a flexible tool, because if you have an Enlightened Karma, you can go Tailstones into Health Pot and a double cast, and it heals you for 12. And so a lot of times you don't have to take risks per se. Things like you don't want to Mystic Shot into a Shape Zone, for example. You don't want to Thermo Beam into like a Twin Discipline. Those can be very, very easy traps in order to bait sort of your removal tools in a position where you don't need to use them necessarily unless you have to, or you get baited to spend your mana into a point where you don't need to. A lot of times, if you can pass and you can get your opponent to pass, if you're both in a state where no one's super far ahead or they're not that far ahead, that's often not better for you. And this sort of deck, it's very hard to explain. It really just comes down to having familiarity with playing Ionia decks overall, having the stall tools like Will, Homecoming, and Concussive Palm to really just help you out. Tasty Faithful also comes into mind here, because that lifesteal does sort of give you a little bit extra time. The more health you have, the more of it you can spend to maybe kind of slow down your opponent, because they decide to open attack and you're okay with taking like 10 or so damage. So I'll try my best to kind of go over some clips, talk about the lines, and see where and when we commit to certain cards, commit to certain resources, and things like that. But I think the main thing that makes this deck a lot easier is the addition of Back Alley Bar, because not only does it provide you with a blocker itself, it just makes your future turns so much more fluid, and it just gives you a nice proactive play. In this deck, you can almost every scenario play Back Alley Bar on turn 6, at least so long as you have 3 mana bank, so you can play any 4 mana spell for 3 mana and be in a good spot. And so it makes your turn 6, 7, and maybe 8, depending on how many bars you actually have, because you can simply just play bar on 6, bar on 7, and actually be ahead from that point forward. Now, your turns 1 through 5, you have a few early units. You have Viktor, you have things like Mystic Shot and Thermal Beam, or even Aftershock. And in the earlier turns, those have a higher chance of going off. We'll review some clips that I think are fundamental, or at least show off the fundamentals of just playing the sort of PNZ Ionia deck, and showcasing how Bar can give us the discounts that we need to really propel us through those mid-game turns to Enlightened. All right, so let's start off with this game against Pirates. So right now, they have a little bit of a board. They have some 2-1s that are getting in. I do have a Tasty Feyfolk in hand. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting, right? Because I could just play Tasty Feyfolk and I could just trade into the 2-1. But I have this Twin Discipline in hand, which allows me to also just get a 2 trades in, or 2 hits in rather, with the Tasty Feyfolk. And if I'm able to successfully do so, that is really good on its own and can really slow down the game, make me a lot less susceptible to burn, and overall just make it much harder for my opponent to deal with. Now, I could have just played Tasty Feyfolk this turn, deteriorated the attack from the 1-1 and just taken 4. But what happens next turn is that he might be inclined to Riptide Summon my Tasty Feyfolk, or TF Gold Card my Tasty Feyfolk. And then all of a sudden, if I have to twin to protect that, then I'm still only getting 1 trade in, and that doesn't really maximize my odds. So taking this little bit of damage here is fine, because now I can open pass here. My opponent doesn't have a target for Riptide Summon, and instead chooses to decimate on their turn, which allows me to now sneak in my Tasty Feyfolk and have a twin onto it to double trade into his 2-1s, and he doesn't have mana to Fervor. So opponent is in an awkward spot here, because if he develops like something that taps him under Fervor mana, I can do this play. And if he just passes, the game state is just too slow, given the fact that I drew a palm, and I still have the Feyblade, Tasty Feyfolk plus the twin in hand to deny him that in the future. And what actually happens here is that he did indeed have a Twisted Fate, and now he's forced a gold card my Tasty Feyfolk on his attack turn, where he's also just completely tapped out of mana and has what is a relatively slow turn. And now I have Viktor plus Viktor Champ spell to remove one of the spiders. Here's another classic example of just generally speaking how some matchups go. You notice that I'm down to 2 health in this matchup, and this is really where something like health total just really has it has a lot less merit to how much of it you have, because you can be quite flexible with how much damage you take, because the win condition is atrocity, right? So here the difference between 2 health and 12 health is, negligible. And if I draw like an Ionia Tailstones next turn, I am able to just simply say just heal back up to full after I play the Karma. And he goes to his atrocity, he has the deny, but because my Barkeep has just been discounting all my cards here, I'm actually able to completely negate his whole sort of turn here, at least this atrocity turn, and just prevent myself from dying. And this is just classic example of how this Ionia kind of style works. You have Will, you have Homecoming, and you have Deny. And it really makes it hard for these atrocity kind of decks to actually kill you, because if that's their entire win con, you're allowed to go down to 2 health. Like, there's no worry there. And now I have leveled Viktor, leveled Karma. He has no board. I just randomly generate Deny even if he has atrocity, and I just have plenty of burn to even deal with this now that my Karma is leveled. So just a classic example there of showcasing using my life total, leveraging my life total as a resource. While you guys might not have seen the full game, you can see that, maybe think about how much damage I let through from the Undyings, for example. And just save resources for this moment when I need to beat atrocity plus deny. And sometimes the setups aren't exactly obvious on what you should necessarily do here. My opponent has a pretty threatening board state, and I'm at a pretty low health total. The good news is I do have, again, the bar, which is discounting all my cards this turn, and I'm able to sort of soft pass through my turn to see what he kind of develops. And now I'm in a spot where obviously I need to remove a large chunk of his board, and I need to think about how I want to do so and how I can set myself up for the best for next turn. I'm going to chuck out this Hexite Crystal because it just kills 3 units on board, and I get to kind of react, see what he does, if he has a Troll Chant, if he has some sort of protection spell, and kind of base the rest of my turn from there. If he has nothing, I get a pretty clean sort of clear up here, but just starting with the crystal to see if he wants to react or not. And then this can dictate the rest of my turn and help me decide on what I necessarily want to be doing. I'm going to speed forward a little bit here just because of animations, but oh, never mind. It's just in time. Where then we chuck off the Mystic Shot into the Gwen. Again, just seeing if he has something like a Troll Chant or some sort of protection spell in order to protect his units. And if he's showing that he doesn't have it, you know, I gotta kind of just go in for pretty free cleanup here. But again, just utilizing my resources smartly, trying not to play into a position where I either leave up a unit that I don't really want to, and just kind of screwing myself over by wasting resources while not also just dealing with the opponent's board. And after that turn, I have just cleared off a big chunk of my opponent's board, and all of a sudden his attack isn't really doing anything. This guy, the 3/1, can't attack into Viktor. I have Palm for Sejuani. I even like Homecoming if I need it. And just debating whether or not I want to take this attack, but I think it's a little bit too risky into some sort of way to proc Sejuani, and he gets a free trade. Now going to next turn, you notice that we still have just a very, very cheap arsenal of tools in our hand. We still haven't used the Telestones, which means that we have a 3-mana Homecoming, and we kind of just set up our board and see how it goes. You notice that Palm does cost 4 mana. We have played a Palm in this game, and generally speaking, you want to be a little bit careful about, you know, when you play out certain cards. If you have 2 Palms in hand, and like only 1 Will, maybe you want to play the Will first, and then just save the Palm when you have an actual discount that you need to, just in case your mana is tight. But you notice here, after all the setup, my opponent's going in for a little bit of a lethal attempt here, and with only 1 card. Sort of just like saying, if you have like any way to proc Sedge, you kind of have it here, and just set up a Homecoming to bounce off the Sejuani with the Barkeep. This leaves me alive because this Sejuani, the Gwen skill does not proc the Sejuani, allowing me to heal off of the Tasty Faefolk. So just sequencing out things, making sure things look all right. But it's pretty clear that we do have to Homecoming this turn just to make sure we get the lifesteal off Tasty Faefolk in order to not die from the Overwhelm. And if things work out, I am left with 1 health, which is 1 more than I need. Last clip I'll show here is just showcasing your ability to think on your feet. My opponent surprised me with a rally, and my hand right now just can't deal with this attack. So the only way that I can see it out for is to kind of dig through my deck and try to find an answer for that, which case I do find the Telestones that I'm looking for. And this gives me access to both Will as well as Homecoming in this turn in order to have any semblance of surviving. Because not only do I have to prevent myself from dying this turn, I also can't block Pike with a unit, because Pike striking will level Pike, and then that will also just kill my Karma, which is a big no-no. So I have to bounce both these. I have to balance both the Overwhelms, protect my Karma, and not allow the Pike to strike a unit or my face, because otherwise I'm dead. So I had to draw into Telestones there for the exactly Homecoming, because I don't think anything else would have done it there. But I'm allowed to Homecoming into one of the Overwhelms. Because Karma is duplicating the Will of Ionia, I actually get to pop and bounce the Spell Shield unit. Now, something that's interesting here, and something that I think is something you do need to look out for, double Homecoming doesn't work, because if you Homecoming a Spell Shield, it recalls your unit, and then the second Homecoming fizzles. The Homecoming doesn't actually work with Karma. There's no synergy there. So just make sure to check the eye constantly for when you're doing it. Luckily for me, there was still a line here where not only do I bounce both Overwhelms, I save my Karma and the Pike doesn't get a strike. And I can try to set myself up the following turn for success, now that I have the time trick. All right, so now that we've gone through the... Oh, let's just turn on. All right, so now that we've gone through the stall up to the Enlightened part, let's now explore what happens after we hit that level of karma onto the board. And I'm going to start off with I think, a very easy trap you can find yourself in, even though you have level of karma. With this deck list, level karma doesn't necessarily equate you to winning the game because you still need to do a lot of things in order to kill your opponent. But I think the biggest thing that you do need to make sure, and almost 100% sure when you do have that flipped karma, is the following: to make sure they have a draw spell for karma. This can be one of many different things. This can be a Shimon Winds, this can be a time trick, this could be a second karma for the Inside of Ages, or this could be deep med. Because when you have that level of karma on that turn 9, maybe you spent a lot of your resources getting to this point, or maybe your hands just stacked with cards like Will of Ionia, Palm, Telstones that don't necessarily win you the game quite yet, and you kind of are floundering around trying to find yourselves a win con. Because again, even though you have flipped karma, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are winning the game yet. You are in a good spot, don't get me wrong, but you need to find a win con. And in order to do that, you do need to be cycling through your deck, either the deep med to find the burn, or the deep med to find a time trick to find a second karma, Shimon Winds just to draw cards, whatever it may be. You do need to make sure that you find a draw spell or have a draw spell for karma when you have karma down on board. And I think the trickiest thing can just be the time trick thing, because you're trying to time trick to hit karma, but then if time trick is your only draw card, should you be saving it in order to see what your next top deck is to play karma, whatever it may be? Just be wary. And it could be something as easy as Shimon Winds. If you have mana to play Shimon Winds on one turn, but it might die in combat, or it might die to some of your opponent's removals, maybe you just want to hold on to that Shimon Winds until you have leveled karma in order to just draw 2 cards off of that. I think that is also just a very, very high consideration. If you have any of these cards that you don't need to play because you think that you're just floating mana and you just want to do something with it, then you can hold on to them and use them with a leveled karma and get double the value and find your win con faster there. So the biggest tip here is to not burn away your cards for the sake of just spending mana if you don't have to. If you're behind and you need to find removal, of course it forces play out some of these cards, but if the position allows you to, and you maybe already have karma in hand, then you can hold on to at least one of them in order to ensure that when you do place karma down onto the board, you have some way of going through your deck in order to find some of your main tools in order to win the game. Now, let's talk about how you actually win the game with this deck, because that's something that I think takes a few games to actually get used to, because unlike the other sort of Karma PNZ decks that you might have seen in the past that are a very burn heavily oriented, that you just like cast, get excited, Mystic Shot on stack, and kill your opponent with, this deck is a little bit different. Now, you still have the possibility and potential of just stacking Mystic Shots and Hexite Crystals onto stack to burn maybe 10 or so health from your opponent, but if your opponent's sitting at 20 health, burnouts aren't necessarily an easy option to go. And that's why Viktor is sort of the core frame of this deck's win condition, and I'll explain it a little bit now. Not only does leveled Viktor just discount all of your created cards by 1 extra, so if you have bar, you're discounting everything by 2. This can be extraordinarily helpful when you have a leveled karma and then you play a karma spell, because the initial karma spell maybe costs 1 off the bar, and then every spell you generate off of the karma costs 2 less, assuming that they are new spells. Now, the important part about Viktor is it has augment. When you're playing karma, you just play out a load of cards, and because they're all created cards, and because any card that you play that is created and is duplicated by karma, you get a second augment stack. So Viktor is scaling really, really fast once you have both Viktor as well as karma on board. Once you have that, every time you play the Hex Core upgrade with the leveled karma, you're able to roll 2 keywords a turn, which means that all you need to do is roll either elusive, overwhelm, maybe fearsome, something like that, and have a Viktor that can just kill your opponent from 20 because you're stacking so many spells. So a lot of the times after I do have a leveled karma and I do have a time trick, often or not, I'm looking for Viktor in order to help me win the game. And that's something that just gets a little bit used to, because I think that's something that's not traditional in terms of how karma decks win the game. It's just karma being able to buff up Viktor, Viktor being able to discount the cards you generate, and then having this OTK stick that is Viktor with 5 keywords and a bunch of stats. Now, a lot of the things afterwards, because there's going to be a lot of variation in your games. You're generating a lot of different cards, and all that just depends on kind of what you get generated, and you kind of just have to work with what you have. You might hit something like Ghost in order to give your Viktor elusive, for example. You might hit Vanguard's Edge or something like Dragon's Kick, Dragon's Rage, and have a way to just swing in with Viktor again, or have setting up like an OTK. You might hit something like Glorious Evolution, and then all of a sudden any unit becomes a threat. You might simply just play Concussive Palm, it doubles up, stuns a unit, all of a sudden you can just swing in for lethal because you stunned away your opponent's blocker, and then set up a decent amount of attackers yourself. Twin doubles up, any attack buff doubles up with Karma, and you're just pushing damage through. And then of course, if you just chip away some of their health down to like 8, 12 health, whatever it may be, you do have access to burn with Mystic Shots and Hexite Crystals, or any other generated burn that you might get, which might include additional Mystic Shots, Get Excited, whatever it may be. You have additional ways of generating burn. I'm going to showcase some sequences that showcase having both Viktor and the Karma on board, but I think one thing that is important to realize with this deck is that you are most likely going to beat down your opponent on board rather than playing for burn. And in most cases, you're going to have a leveled Viktor as well as a leveled Karma in order to do so. So before you get... or rather, after you get to that leveled Karma stage, be sure to find a Viktor in order to help support and finish off the game. All right, let's explore a few different sequences here that help us enable us to win the game. So right off the bat, we do hit the Karma, and we're lucky enough to hit a time trick off of our top deck to kind of find a way to end the game. We find Viktor, which is, again, fantastic. One of the things that I mentioned is going to be integral in helping us win the game, and we hit Karma. So now we can really see how this deck manages to pop off. Now, ideally, are able to kill them on turn 10. It's totally possible, but some of the cases that won't always be the case, because a lot of it does depend on what you do generate. If you already had a Viktor with like 5 different keywords already on board, because you still do need to hit a game-winning keyword onto the Viktor before you can actually end the game. So we roll 2 keywords here. We do hit Overwhelm, which is phenomenal because that is one of the 2 main keywords besides elusive that helps us win the game. We play the Inside of Ages, and unfortunately, our rolls here just aren't actually fantastic. Our opponent's at 16 health. It's a little bit too difficult for us to stack that much damage given how much mana we have, as well as what our current hand is looking like. And so we're just going to have to get a little bit creative. At this point, we are just trying to dump hands because we are generating a lot of cards every turn. We're generating one off of Viktor, we're generating one off of Karma, and we're also getting a top deck draw. So it's very important to just start dumping my hand because a lot of these cards are quite expensive. You notice that I generated a 4 mana card, a 5 mana card, and another 5 mana card. And so I'll have to find time to play them, to dump them out of hand, while also just not randomly tapping under Atrocity mana or any response to Atrocity, given that my opponent is now on top decks. So I opt just to play one of the, I don't even know what that card is called, but the one that generates shady characters, or the Chempunk Shredder. And I just end the turn. I'm not looking to end the game yet. I could have attacked with the Assigned Disciple. Never mind, they have an elusive blocker. What am I saying? So we're kind of chilling here. If they didn't have an elusive blocker, I could just totally get in with the Assigned Disciple. And you notice there, I did burn a card because I'm a little bit tricky in managing my hand here. I just didn't have the opportunity to play any more cards out because I just tap under Atrocity. But we most certainly are winning the next turn. So again, we'll just start off with a double hex core, buff up our Viktor 2 more, get 2 more keywords, and kind of just see where it goes. What's really cool about Viktor is that the hex core just allows you to have this sort of soft pass sort of system and letting you just give your opponent priority back and kind of just go from there. And let's be forward a bit. Their last card is Viego. I had a sequence here where I am actually able to kill the Viego just to get some peace of mind. And he swings in, we clear up some of the mists, and all of a sudden, we find ourselves in a spot where, even though we didn't really have a flashy win or anything like that, our opponent just doesn't have any more board. We have an Overwhelmed Viktor that has 17 health. We have a decent board. We have a Deny. We have a Will. We have so many ways of protecting ourselves. It doesn't even really matter what his top deck card is. We could have just opened attack chain and we'd have had lethal, but I just play out the hex core anyway, just to make sure that I am ending the game. Not that I think there is any way of him to save himself, but you notice here that we just kind of just grinded our opponent out. And we have a nice swing in with a 19 power Viktor. And the deny for the vengeance. And in the second clip, I hope you just start noticing a trend in how these games really end. So top deck Viktor, you know how it goes. I'm going to be playing the Viktor, I'm going to be giving a bunch of keywords, and I'm just going to start buffing up that impact to kind of end the game. You notice that in my hands, well, after this animation goes through, my hand isn't actually all that good. In this as Karma Mirror, I've had a bunch of cards that aren't necessarily that impactful or don't necessarily win me the game. Things like Palm, Will of Ionia, Tasty Fave Folk, and Thermo Beam. Like, these cards are just kind of useless in this current situation, but it doesn't really matter since I'm just so ahead of my opponent. I have Karma on board, I have leveled Viktor, and I have another Time Trick. Now, Time Trick is drawing me 2 cards. Viktor and Karma are drawing me 1 card each. I'm drawing a card at round start. There's a lot of things that you do need to think about, but in this scenario, I'm just thinking about how I want to start dumping out my hands. I could have willed my Karma, but again, I don't want to spend 5 mana to replay Karma because I do want to start just dumping out cards from my hand and slowly just manage to cycle through, making sure of hand space and things like that. So hitting Karma, this one, I just take the Elusive if I wanted to, but I might have taken Viktor just to ping off the 2-1 because it's free and I can just get it out of my hands. But in this case, okay. So I do end up taking the Viktor just to death ray the 2-1 or even like the 4-2, and I can just dump it out of my hand because it does cost 0. And because I do have the Inside of Aegis to refill all my hands, again, I'm just very, very constantly considering my hand size, because what you don't want to be doing is you don't want to be burning the Viktor's Hex Core upgrade, because that's really what gets you that keyword to win the game. Now, obviously, in this spot, I also just have Concussive Palm. My opponent doesn't really have a board, and I can probably just stun myself out of it. But another Death Ray, just able to remove the last blocker, and regardless of what keywords I actually have on my Viktor, I can just set up for a nice clean open attack. I even just double up here because I'm looking at how to count damage on my Viktor. I do have denies, so I just need this Viktor to connect. And but my opponent is at a nice healthy 19 damage. I don't think there's any point in like saving or like just messing up my top decks here. Or rather, I don't think there's any punish to just messing up my top decks here. I'd rather just not only dump cards out of my hand, but also just get my Viktor's impact up. And now you notice I am presenting lethal on the open. I just draw more cards that help me to stack impact. And I do have a spare Mystic Shot in hand if I do need the burn. But right now I'm just presenting lethal. Go for it. I would deny back up my Viktor rolled Spell Shield. And this looks to be a pretty nice spot to kind of wrap things up. So he spends 4 mana on a Palm and the will to bounce my Viktor. I do have this deny. And even if I didn't have the deny, was there a way to just completely buff up my board? No, but again, I'm just so far ahead. Even if this doesn't pan out the way I wanted to, just very, very far ahead. I should have denied the will or the homecoming here, but turns out fine. And I just slap in for lethal. This is probably one of my cleaner setups. Not only do I just have a nice clean hand, I managed to dump most of the cards in my hands setting up to this turn. So I have my Karma, I have my Viktor, and I have a very nice clean hand for once, which is often not a nice little rarity, but I will very much appreciate the fact that I have a very nice clean hand to start generating cards, to start filling up my hand, and just help me find the cards I need to necessitate this lethal setup. So roll 2 keywords, hit Overwhelm, phenomenal, and now all I need to do is just stack up lethal. What's really cute here is I have this very cool opportunity to what's this card called? Iterative Improvement onto the Shell Shocker, because what happens here is I get to generate a Shell Shocker for free. My iterative costs 0 mana, and I am generating 2 of them. So essentially, I have 2 free attunes, which means I'm playing next turn with 15 mana, which I thought was really, really cute. But nonetheless, we hit a Charm, which means that we can balance the Shell Shocker for a 3rd time, which means we have 16 mana to play with, and we're just ready to start going. Now, you might not see any draw in this hand, but I do have a built-over Telestones, which also translates over to a Progress Day. So I have 6 card draw in my hand. He starts off with the Riptide Sermon to try to kill my Karma, and I'm also at 2 health, so don't forget to heal face and the Karma. But you notice here that I am playing it quite close to the edge, just simply because I do have a lot of healing in my deck. Like, even if my opponent tries to burn me out for the last bit, you notice that he played the Ruinous Path into the Riptide Sermon. I just had plenty of mana to really get to what I needed to do. So I spent 1 mana on the Telestones, the created cards are free, and now I just dump out my hands again, play the Shell Shocker, get my mana back, and rip the Progress Day, and things should wrap up nice and smoothly. My Viktor's already at 14 attack anyways, so there's not really anything my opponent can do. But just go through the hoops, even in the spot where, you know, I don't even need to play the Progress Day. Oh, I didn't even get to do it, whoops. But even in that spot, you notice that I just had complete board control, and my health total, I just could kind of go as low as I wanted to. But I just do want to showcase or you do need to be a little bit, you can be a little bit creative in how you kind of play things out. But just as long as you save resources like the Telestones, heal up the Karma, heal the face, prevent lethal, the world is your oyster. And really any sort of sequencing gets you there as long as you do roll the keywords onto Viktor. Now, if I didn't roll the keywords onto Viktor, I need to end the game. You know, I still rolled Lifesteal, I'd survive next turn. I draw 6 cards, I generate 1 more. I'm in a totally fine spot, even if the game doesn't end this turn. But I am lucky enough to have a position where I am able to just close things out. Lastly, let's just run through some of the matchups that this deck has and some of the more common ones you might face on ladder. Starting off with Kindred Nasus, I think this matchup is actually quite good for us. You don't really care about your health total because all you need to do is just play around Atrocity as long as you survive. Well, they can't kill you because you have a bunch of denies, wills, homecomings in order to bounce whatever Atrocity unit they have. You have Thermo Beam as well as Aftershock in order to kill Kindred. And as long as you mull your cards correctly, I think this matchup is actually quite good. Second matchup that I think is actually really, really good for us is into the Heimer Nora deck, because they're a deck that goes long, but can't really win the game. And we are also a deck that goes long, but we can win the game. We have removal for Nora with Mystic Shots, we have Thermo Beams for Heimers, and we have generally more Karmas than they do have Mini Morphs. If they don't draw a Mini Morph, they lose the game. So just another fantastic matchup for us. The matchups where we definitely struggle the most are into Burn. So Pirates is actually not that good of a matchup than you would expect. Even though we have the removal and the healing, that matchup just isn't really all that good for us. It's still winnable, maybe around like the 40-60 mark, but still just a relatively bad matchup for us. The second one that I kind of just lumped together are the rally decks, the Poppy Lulu, Poppy Tarek. Any deck with the rallies can be very tough for us. We do have some sort of protection with palms, denies, wills, things like that. But overall, again, just a rough matchup throughout. And I'd lump it pretty close to what the burn matchups are like as well. I think lastly, some of the more popular piles like the Ionia decks, whether it be like Nami Ionia, Akshan Lee Sin, Nami Lee Sin, whatever Ionia deck it is, even like Ezreal Kennen, it's at the very least at least a 50-50. Ez Kennen probably being the worst matchup for us, Akshan Lee probably being the best matchup for us, and then Nami decks somewhere in between. Nami I'd probably put out like a 55-45, Lee Sin I'd put out like a 60-40, and then Ez Kennen I'd put like around a 50-50. But the good news is we are an Ionia deck that can go toe-to-toe with pretty much any other Ionia deck out there, and so long as we have decent draws, we have a lot of advantage because we're all playing about the same cards, except we have the discount off of the BARKEEP, which is definitely something that tips these matchups to our favor, and we have the most powerful late game so long as we get there. So that's just a general matchup table, and lastly, I'll leave you guys with some tips and tricks. All right, so tip number 1 with this deck is you can sneak in this Hex Core upgrade over any sort of fast spell in situations like this where I don't actually want to use the Hex Core upgrade to pass over initiative to my opponent. I can simply play, or rather I can simply play it if over or first before any fast spell on stack in order to get that progress for Viktor. This can sometimes roll you a keyword like lifesteal or faded or spell shield that can actually protect your Viktor while also sneaking in a fast action like concussive palm. Tip number 2, Shimon Winds has a very interesting sort of mechanic where the first one isn't actually technically created. It simply transforms into the disciple. But this is the first time that I'm going to cast this. And you'll notice that it doesn't give any stacks towards Viktor. You see that the Viktor progress doesn't actually level up. But when it strikes for a second time and creates the second copy of Shimon Winds, this one actually counts as a created card, counts towards Viktor, and also gets discounted by Viktor later on. I said this once and I'll say it again. Homecoming doubled up with Karma doesn't actually do anything because Homecoming cast a second time doesn't actually have a unit to recall. In a similar vein, Stand United doesn't actually work into something like Vengeance because Karma will swap the spots and then will swap back again. So just be sure that when you're sequencing things like Homecoming, even like Stand United or Syncopation, some cards actually just don't work when they're doubled up. So just be wary of that. And happy gaming. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap up your Karma Viktor Masterclass, the Barkeep deck, my favorite deck of the season. Hope you guys learned something new, and hopefully you guys can take some of this information, ingrain it into your games, and help you guys perform the deck a little bit better. There's definitely some things that definitely take a few times to get used to, whether that be navigating your Enlightened Karma, whether that be just setting up your turns, making sure you survive until then, or just changing how you mulligan this deck. Whatever it may be, please take your time to go through, look back at this video if you need to understand the main points, and hopefully you guys can take away something from it if you guys want to play this deck. I'll leave the deck list down below as always, and feel free to reach out, comments, Discord, Twitch, whatever it may be, on any questions you might have in the future. I'm going to leave you guys with one example game that I think is quite good in the sense that it's both piloted very well, it's executed very cleanly, and I win in a timely fashion. So thank you guys so much for making it all the way to the end. If you guys did like the video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel because it really helps me out and shows that you like this kind of content. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please enjoy the example game, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out guys, have a good one. Is this the World W deck? Wind protects Viktor from a Riptide. Some value in that. Yeah. The Homecoming was bait, unfortunately. It wasn't like the worst, but it was pretty bad. Okay, it was pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. Homecoming was bait there. I probably could have fought for his Lee Sin on stack next turn even if I had Spell Shield. The issue with that is that I just didn't have Karma, so I wasn't actually winning it. It's on me. It's a good draw. Double Forsaken. Does this deck runs Bloodletters? Yeah, it's a 4-0 deck with Akshan. There's no way it doesn't have Bloodletters. Classic. So funny that Shell Shocker has found its way back into this game.
Don't want to die? Don't do terrible things.
When a Shell Shocker, when you play Riptide Sermon, you kind of need mana, and it's just a 0 mana 1-drop. Like the Attune gives you mana back to play like Riptide Sermon. Do I Mystic Shot here? It's not bad. If he has Shapestone, I'm actually really sad, which is like the only downside. Does this deck run Shapestone? I don't know. Just please die. Please perish. Oh, Absolver, interesting. Okay. I don't know if I can be that sad with Absolver. Oh, okay. Appreciate. Nice. Can't Riptide Sermon me. Not nice. You can kill it somehow. Oh, I can't Riptide this turn anyways. I'll probably try to kill Auction here and then you can play back alley bar. Nice. Okay, we'll Mystic it next turn on stack. We can probably just get away with playing Tasty here. No Riptide, nice. Like if you Riptided this, that's actually kind of annoying. In and out. Shape doesn't matter. He needs 2 spells. Can't be Absolver. If he shaped Absolver, I can twin, yeah? I want to play this now because I don't want to use a twin because twin gets a discount later. It's fine. And now there's no Yin on board that you can Riptide Sermon again. I'm kind of just chilling here. We are at 8 health, so we're not exactly chilling, but lifesteal. Challenger. Not exactly chilling, but for now we're kind of chilling. That's playable. That's surprisingly playable. Like if we devour this and we like eat the blood or like the blood letters, like that's hilarious. Like we can obliterate a blood letters, which I think is hilarious. Like it's actually just really funny. Sure. I don't think this Auction's like, he's not getting this isn't a deck that can like proc the horde from like 8 to 1 in like 1 turn, so I'm not gonna assume that this is gonna go off. So I don't really have to worry about it quite yet. Lifesteal, pow. Quick attack, pow. Faded. Not that bad. Pow. Buy blood letters. Getting rid of A blood letters is cute, I guess. Still the second one, but making progress. Palm is good. Riptide Sermon is bad. We have to twin here. Let's win Palm Auction, yeah. I'll probably just twin here. It means that we can't twin Viktor next turn, which sucks. But I think it's alright. I'm also just getting an attack here, which is great. I might even eat a 2-1. Like it might be worth. I think we're just on plan mitigate damage. It's fine, I think. Because it can't Zalani me, right? So like, is there something I should be afraid of? Like I just palm? It's not like he has decimates or free attacks. I guess, no, he can't flip Auction, right? Kind of hard. Bones deck, is this the Is this the Swain deck? Wait, we're actually losing. What happened this game? Why are we losing? Why are we in this spot? Because his Horde's popping, he's gonna draw 2 cards. That's no bueno. Hitting Aftershock here would be kind of dope. Or Karma. Okay. Hey, all right, we heal for 12. Let's go. Okay, I think we're chilling. I like healing for 12. Like healing for 12, you know, is pretty good. It makes me feel very safe.
My spirit is unquenchable fire.
Oh, the time trick. Iterative Shadow Assassin. We could do that. We have the world is our oyster. There should be no way we like randomly die here. We copy the Dark Enthrall. Iterative Palm. It doesn't work like that, push V. You just get the tail back. Well, I guess we can pass for now. We're in no rush to do anything.
Never lost a fair game. Played one.
I got 1 discount. Thrall can't block. I don't want to play out any of these. We shouldn't lose here, and we're almost guaranteed to save Karma, yeah. Alright. Oh yeah, his discount's crazy. Him getting a discount's actually really insane. Yep.
Your attack is obvious.
I guess we just heal our Karma. Right. Lee Sin is through the top 6 highest win rate decks at the minute Masters. It's a good deck, but I think it has good counters too. Like Karma, Viktor, and Heimer, Nora do pretty good counters now. I find it hard to like think that. I could see it just because it's a good deck and there's a lot of good Lee Sin pilots over the years, but I actually see it like be the top is kind of crazy. Wait, that's free mana. That's pretty cute. Furnace. You get 2 mana for free. That's disgusting. Oh, we're not gonna play it this turn because I have full mana. We have 2 mana. We have free. We have Innervate, chat. We have we have 3 free mana. We're playing with 16 mana this turn, guys. We have 16 mana this turn to play with. Yo, you got it, homie. God, this is disgusting. I almost forgot to heal my face. That would have been embarrassing. We can actually play Progress Day and like actually just get mana back. That's hilarious.
I don't do meditation.
They will never die because
God, free mana. Disgusting. No, I didn't even pop off yet. I had 6 more cards to draw. Damn.
As it
Unfortunate.